Hey people, and welcome back to the vlog. For this special episode, a friend of mine and I drove to King's Casino in the Czech Republic near the border to Germany to play some cash games there, and also there was a VSOP circuit event, the 250 mini main event, which I tried to play but bricked completely for 2 bullets. Anyway, there were some cash games as well, and usually they're playing 1-3 there, but it turns out 1-3 is no more at King's Casino. They only offer 2-5 games. My goal for this year was to take a shot at 2-5 when I reached a bankroll of 10k. That's almost the case, but to be honest, I really wasn't ready for that at the beginning. But since we drove more than 5 hours to play and there is no other option to play cash games, we hop into the 2-5 game and let's see how it goes. Have fun. So when we arrived at the King's Casino, we were already pretty nervous after we noticed there is no 1-3 game going. And this feeling got even worse when we sat down at the table and recognized almost everybody was straddling for 10, sometimes even double straddling for 20 euro. But before we go into the first hand, guys, please smash that subscribe and that like button, but especially the subscribe button, because only 18% of you who are watching are subscribers to the channel, and it would help me and the channel to grow. Thanks guys, and now into the first hand. So the first hand is no exception when it comes to straddling. We see a button straddle to 10 and the small blind double straddles to 20. Feels pretty great when you have in mind this is my first 2-5 session, this is my first shot, and we are already playing 2, 5, 10, 20. Nice. Anyway, we see a call from the big blind and I look down at ace jack offsuit. I decide to raise to 80. The small blind and the big blind call. So we go 3 ways to a flop of 9-6 deuce with 2 hearts. There are already 250 euro into the pot and the small blind checks, but the big blind decides to go all in for his remaining stack of 190, and I think there is no other option than folding, and that's what I do. Yeah, feels great to play 2-5. And after the first hand I lost another pot and I already had to rebuy for 200 euro before we see this hand. There is a straddle from the under the gun player to 10 and it folds to the button who decides to call, and I look down at 10-9 of spades. I decide to raise it up here and I raise to 50. The big blind, the under the gun straddle and the button decide to call. So we go 4 ways to a flop out of position of ace 10-7 with 1 spade. Even though I might have the range advantage here, and maybe because I'm still a little nervous and because I have second pair, I decide to check and my opponents behind me check as well. We see a beautiful 9 of diamonds on the turn, which gives me 2 pair, and of course I want to go for value now, so I bet 125. Unfortunately, both of my opponents relatively quickly fold, but we drag in our first pot here at the 2-5 streets. Feels pretty good again, and my nervous level getting a little lower. On to the next one. About 1.5 hours into the session I recognize the games are pretty soft. Players limp a lot, there are not so many 3-bets, and of course all the players who play 2-5 now are used to play smaller stakes like 1-2, 1-3, and most of them are afraid and nervous as well, like I was. So I start to feel more comfortable. In this hand I have ace jack offsuit and we see another under the gun straddle to 10. The hijack before me calls and I raise to 45. It folds back to the hijack who calls the 45 and we see a flop heads up of ace 10-6 with 2 clubs. He checks to me, I bet 50, he folds, I win the pot. Sometimes it's easy, keep going, on to the next hand. The next hand is a normal 2-5 hand where we see a limp from early position and the loosest and splashiest player before me in the cutoff raises to 30. I really want to get involved in hands with him, so I decide to call here in position and all the other players fold. So we see a flop heads up of queen 6-5 with 2 spades. So we flop ourselves an open-ended straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. The cutoff decides to bet and he bets pretty big. He bets 50. With all the equity we have here in this hand, I decide to call and reevaluate on the turn, but the turn makes it kinda easy for us because it brings in the 4 spades. I mean, the front door flush draw got there, but after the cutoff checks to me, I want to go for value here and kind of protection because I don't want to see another spade on the river, which makes my decisions pretty tough, I guess. So I decide to bet 100 now. The cutoff really takes some time, but ultimately decides on a fold. We scoop in another pot, we can't complain. On to the next one. In the next hand, the 10 euro button straddle is on and I'm in the small blind next to act with ace queen of clubs. I raise to 35 and the hijack and the button straddle behind me call. So we go 3 ways to a not so good looking flop for us of jack 8-4 with 2 diamonds and 1 spade. I check and both of my opponents check back. We see no improvement for us in form of the 6 of diamonds. I check again. The hijack now bets 35, but there's no way I can continue here, so I decide to fold and go on to the next one. I know guys, this is not the most interesting session with big pots, tricky spots and stuff like this, but for me it still was pretty exciting to play higher limits and I still want to share it with you guys. But make sure to stay tuned, there will be 2 more vlogs of the King's Casino trip with 2-5 action and there will be bigger pots for sure, I promise. So we go into the next hand. Here we are in the +1 position with king, queen offsuit and the under the gun player before me straddles to 10. Of course. I raise to 35 and only the big blind and the under the gun player call. We see an unfortunate flop of jack 3 deuce rainbow. The big blind donk leads right away for 100 all in and yeah, I think there's no other option than fold. I'm not in a gamble mood right now, so we see next hand. In this hand there is another under the gun straddle to 10 and we see 3 callers before me and I'm in the big blind with 7-5 of spades. I decide to complete as well and under the gun checks his option. So we see a flop 5 ways of king 5 deuce with 2 diamonds. The action checks through on this flop. The river brings the 4 and here I think since nobody showed interest into the pot and I think a king would probably bet the flop, I might be good here. So I bet 30. Only the button call. So we see a river heads up and it brings in the 8 of hearts. I check to my opponent ready to call a bet because the obvious flush draw missed and only 6-7 got there, but my opponent checks back and we are good. The button shows ace-6 offsuit, so he was floating here only with ace high. That's no good, sir. On to the next one. In this hand I'm under the gun with 7-6 of hearts and there is no straddle this time, so I raise to 15. It folds to the blinds who both decide on a call, so we see a flop 3 ways of 6-4-4 with 1 heart. The blinds check to me and I decide to bet 25, which only the small blind decides to call. We see a beautiful 3 of hearts on the turn, which actually gives us a gut shot to the straight flush. After the small blind checks to me, I could bet here I think, but I decide to check back. There could be a slow played 4 and maybe a better 6 which outkicked me. At least this was my thought in this situation and we see a jack of hearts on the river. We improve to a flush and even better news, the small blind now decides to lead into us. He bets 37. Even though the board is paired and my flush isn't the best, I still can raise here, get value from a slow played 4, maybe a river jack, and if he raises me again on the river I have an easy fold here, and so I decide to raise, but I keep my raise on the smaller side. I only raise to 90. The small blind immediately calls us. I roll over the flush and we are good. He mugs his hand, so we will never know what he had, but I think he had a jack. He doesn't seem too angry about my rivered flush, so I don't think he has a 4. And there's one more hand I played in this session. Let's go. In the last hand we played in this session, I gained so much confidence that I put on the 10 euro straddle on the button. It folds to the cutoff who raises to 27. I look down at ace-5 of clubs. And since we are heads up, I think this is a good opportunity to 3-bet here, because he should open very bright here from the cutoff. Anyway, this is a limit I never played before and I don't mind calling here and play in position with such a hand. And in fact that's what I do, I call and we see a flop heads up. The flop comes 10-6 deuce with no club and after he bets 40 I have an easy fold. And yeah, that's it for this session. We booked a small profit, but let's go into the session update. And of course a very short session update because it's very late right now and tomorrow is a tournament I want to play. I was into the game for 700 euro and out for 750. So our first shot at 2-5 worked out, we booked a profit as well, and there will be 2 more days. Stay tuned for this one, there will be at least 1 or 2 more vlogs. Thank you very much, goodbye.